Welcome back, everybody. There's Rare of His Photos. We're going to be reading some more Child Bride. Now, this is the book that Suzanne Finstead wrote as she investigated Priscilla. She felt like that Priscilla's book pretty much said nothing about herself. She really said nothing about the relationship with Elvis for the most part. And she thought there was a lot of missing pieces. If you're new to the channel, excuse me. If you're new to the channel, click on Rare of His Photos, look for playlists, you'll see Child Bride as one of the playlists. And we've been reading, we are now about the middle of the book. And thank you to you subscribers on Facebook, Instagram that have come over here. And if you're watching this on Facebook, go to the YouTube channel, Rare of His Photos, and watch. Just to give everybody a quick update that might be new to this book, Revelation and Child Bride is what the back of the book says. The family secret of Priscilla's real father. Why Elvis was magnetically drawn to Priscilla bobblehead at first glance and the bonds that bound them. Paul and Ann bobblehead's role in Elvis's courtship of Priscilla. The reason for Elvis's fascination with her being a young girl and his secrets. The truth behind the famous photo of Priscilla waving farewell to Elvis in Germany. The catalyst for Elvis's long-awaited proposal to Priscilla. The real reason Elvis left Priscilla. How Priscilla was betrayed by the men in her life, one of whom fell in love with her daughter, Lisa. How Michael Jackson and Lisa Presley really met, and why they became involved. Okay, so right now we are reading chapter 23. So that's where we're going to get started. Hey, thank you if you've left me super thanks lately. I appreciate that. That helps me greatly, helps my family. If you become a member lately, I appreciate that. Membership's as low as $9.99. That also helps my channel. It helps me to get books, to take the time, to set the time aside to do this. The interviews that I do as well. Those of you that can, I appreciate it. Those of you that can't, I appreciate you sharing, liking, following, all the good stuff, watching it. MITTE stands for Made It to the End, in case you're seeing that everywhere. That helps these videos trend on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok, and helps spread the message of Elvis more. So let's get started, okay? Chapter 23. I do, I don't. In a way, Priscilla's heartbreaking beauty has been as much a curse as a blessing to her. It had transformed her from birth into the object of her mother's frustrated ambition. When she was just 3, it had drawn Paul Bobblehead, who wanted her for himself, leading to the family secret that would tarnish her childhood and forever blur her identity. It had isolated her in school as a creature too rarefied to be friends with normal girls. And at 14, her exquisite face had attracted superstar Elvis Presley, and initiated a fantasy with dark, sometimes dangerous undertones, according to Suzanne Finstead. Through it all, Priscilla Bobblehead demonstrated a remarkable ability to adapt, a consequence in part of her military upbringing. Beneath her porcelain facade, she was a survivor. Well, you'd think she was made of iron, pronounced Willie Jane Nichols, the Tennessee sage who watched Priscilla go through adolescence competing with fame and Margaret, substances, Elvis's cohorts, rock and roll, and movies. Patty Perry, who observed Priscilla on the West Coast, regarded her as supremely self-possessed. Well, she always carried herself. She dealt with it, and she dealt with it well. I think inside she was a mess, but she also knew that she had Elvis Presley. Priscilla's real life as the girlfriend of Elvis Presley was far and away from what she must have pictured when she was 12, listening to Hound Dog while curled up on the bed in her pajamas with Pam. The celebrity whom Priscilla had taken up with now, a movie star, was no longer a rocker. By the mid-60s, 5 years into their relationship, Priscilla still had not seen Elvis perform live. See, he'd given his last concert in the spring of 1961 while she was in Germany. The Elvis who mugged his way through bad but entertaining B pictures was not the electrifying, slightly menacing rock rebel of Priscilla's earlier years, and this may have been a subtle factor in their growing estrangement. Elvis the movie star had settled into a routine of 3 or 4 pictures a year, which brought Priscilla back to LA once Anne Margaret had receded into the background. She was, to Joe Esposito's watching eyes, still enamored of Hollywood and movie making, in contrast to Elvis's deepening disillusionment. In a span of 9 months in 1964, he shot Girl Happy, Tickle Me, and I'm Just a Roustabout, rolling from town to town. I like that movie. It's one of my favorites. Films that Elvis, who had aspired to follow in the tradition of Dean and Brando, found increasingly embarrassing and stultifying to his singing and acting ability. He was hindered, ironically, by success. For the formula films were so profitable that Elvis, Colonel Parker, had kept him contractually enslaved to the genre. Elvis could have changed that, probably, Priscilla proclaimed to Barbara Walters years later, if he had more of a confront, which now that's a Scientology term meaning to confront, with Colonel Parker. Elvis, as his occasional detriment, left the negotiating to the Colonel and concentrated on the creative. Now Priscilla, for all of her post-mortem bravado, would not have presumed to make a business suggestion to Elvis, because she knew her place. Elvis, by the later observations of those who were around him, seemed to have not given much thought to even Priscilla's intelligence. I think she was a rocket scientist, is what Elvis believed, Joe ruminated. But I don't think that he thought she was stupid either. Her intellect, simply, was not an issue, as it shouldn't have been. To anybody dating somebody, I mean, obviously, if you date somebody that walks in the walls because they don't realize that there's a wall there all the time, and that's not just a jokey, funny thing, or somebody that doesn't challenge you. I think that intelligence is one of those things that if somebody has a good heart, they're kind, but they're not intelligent, no big deal. There can be very intelligent people that are not nice people. And I try to say that as much as I can, to, in a sense, defend her, but at the same time point out that she really was very unintelligent in a lot of ways. Even then, Priscilla's interest seemed to drift in the direction of film. She read movie magazines, recalled Barbara Little, took a drama class in Memphis, and projected the frustrated air of someone weary of remaining in the shadows. Now, Elvis's stepmother, Dee, whose later clashes with Priscilla occasionally colored her accuracy, considered Priscilla envious of Elvis and a simmering pot waiting to boil over. This observation made good sense, because Priscilla was accustomed to a degree of adoration and interest that she would never attain in the presence of Elvis Presley. She went to Universal once on a tour, remember George Klein? From what I remember, one of the producers on the lot saw her and offered her a screen test, not knowing who she was. The screen test, or any career in show business, would never happen as long as she was Elvis's girlfriend or wife, a limitation that Priscilla accepted reluctantly. So, it was doomed. It was doomed from the beginning. Priscilla wanted the rebel. She wanted the rocker. She wanted the bad boy, like she'd hung out with when she was 13 and 14 and 15 and 16. Messed around with. all that other stuff. She wanted that bad boy, and Elvis just simply wasn't. He was a Southern gentleman who was a mama's boy, who was becoming a grown adult, in a sense, with these movies. And she wanted all of the attention that she had in high school, and all the attention that she had from her mother. And when you're around Elvis, no matter who you are, you don't shine nearly as bright. Her life was carefully circumscribed to fit Elvis's needs. She avoided his movie sets, tolerated his ever-present circle of aides, and adjusted life inside of a glass cage, where fans congregated outside the gates of whichever house Elvis was occupying. I know she didn't care for the fans, commented Sandy Miller, one of the girls who spent weekends at Elvis's later houses in Palm Springs. See, you can't blame her. She couldn't go outside to her house without having 30 or 40 kids outside of her gate. And guys who worked for Elvis would bring their girlfriends to the house. I might get a little tired of that too. Now, Priscilla bore this with varying degrees of patience, alternating between a detached friendliness, occasional warmth, and thinly veiled scorn. She went out and told the fans to all go home and leave us alone on several occasions. If Elvis knew about that, go home, leave us alone. Have you ever heard of that before? I don't think I'd heard of that. So this is kind of new information. That she was so threatened by it, by the attention of the fans and the adoration of the fans, that she... Now that may be why some of those girls... Remember that fight that Priscilla got into? And Elvis got so upset and he bashed their windshield in. I mean, Elvis was a defender. Elvis defended people. And he defended Priscilla. For all that I make videos about Priscilla and Elvis, it's more about the fact that she tricked him and she fooled him. And she got what she wanted, and then she just bolted. She wasn't willing to work on it. She wasn't willing to be patient. She wasn't willing to grow. She wasn't willing to communicate. Instead, she as soon as Lisa was born, she found a way to exit stage right with money. All right. So she went out and told all the fans to go home, leave us alone on several occasions, said Sandy. She went to the point of calling the police even. I know that at the Hillcrest house, she called the police and had barriers put up. Elvis basically reversed that. He called the police and told them, they're allowed to stay, they're welcome. Oh my goodness. Priscilla was treading on sacred ground when it came to Elvis Presley's fans. Elvis and his fans loved each other unconditionally, and Elvis embraced them, both literally and figuratively, stopping by the gate no matter how tired he might be, to sign autographs, take pictures, swap stories. He was a warm and open-hearted man who truly loved people, and he understood that his fans were the reason for his success. I think that's the best line that Suzanne has put in this book. And then that tells me that she, I think, understood that he was a warm and open-hearted man who truly loved people, and he understood that his fans were the reason for his success. Priscilla, who was aloof by nature, kept them at arm's length. She also recognized herself as their rival, for she occupied the position that Elvis's female fans only dreamed of. She was the king's girlfriend. Being banished to Memphis while Elvis was shooting in L.A. or recording in Nashville was tantamount to solitary confinement for Priscilla. Because I didn't have anything to do, she told a documentarian. He didn't want me to work. I remember shopping every single day. There must have been about 3 or 4 stores that I would faithfully return to each day. And I got to where I knew the stock more than I knew the people, or the people knew about the stock that worked there did. And one day I said, this is ridiculous. No one can shop this much. It was just something to do to kill time. Now, her intimate life with Elvis still consisted largely of foreplay or videotapes. Of videotaping, let's just say. Herself and another. It was not Priscilla's ideal. At first I took this personally, but even the relationship he had after me, they weren't consummated. Long-term relationships, like the relationship with Ginger, well, there really wasn't anything like that involved. Hollywood reporter Rona Barrett, who was a close friend of Juliet Prowse while Juliet was dating, recalled Juliet telling her that the minute that the relationship had its first, second, and third night, it was over. Elvis, according to Juliet Prowse and others, had completed the act only once or twice. Like, he could do it once, but not really again, said Rona. Curry Grant, who was as much a playboy as Elvis during their years in Germany, felt that Elvis loved the thrill of the chase, the need for conquest, but once he had a woman where he wanted her, he just simply grew bored and wanted to move on to the next one. Priscilla, by now, had become more confident of her standing in Elvis's life, even instituting changes here and there at Graceland. Well, she had never had to look at a checkbook, much less balancing one, and she had an unlimited clothing budget. She started designing some of her own outfits and presenting her ideas to a Memphis dressmaker to sew. Now, to a different young woman, a life of leisure with Elvis Presley might have been a fabulous fantasy, but for Priscilla, who craved variety and action and a full-throttle intimate relationship, it was a form of exile. Elvis had not changed fundamentally since she'd met him, nor did he seem to pretend to be anything other than what he was, because that's who he was. Not who she imagined he was, and not the image that she fell in love with, which was the rocker that grunted and on stage and had mass pandemonium occur and cops wanting to arrest him. That's what she wanted, and once again, I mean, she wanted what she wanted, right? But she had a choice once she saw who he was to get out of Dodge without taking the money, without the trap. And her and her mother talked about it. It had to have happened. Well, I want to leave, Mom. I'm not happy. No, you stay there. What else do you have? You gave up your life. She's a human. He's a human. You go start a life somewhere else. And don't ruin somebody else's life. That's what I think. Now, we wouldn't have had Lisa or Riley or Ben, but there's been a lot of tragedy from that. Lisa and Ben. And Riley had to deal with it, and she's still having to deal with it. And who knows where that's going to lead to Harper and Finley or Riley. Okay. He was seeing other women while they were still in Germany. And it was there that he revealed his intimate preferences and insecurities. Priscilla had experienced his nocturnal lifestyle, seen his male circle of friends. She knew all of that. She accepted that, a later girlfriend of Elvis remarked. He was just going on with his life. It was Priscilla who was the poser. She had assumed a false persona in Wiesbaden to get close to Elvis. Good for you, Suzanne. Exactly what I've been saying. A poser. She was a poser. She had assumed a false persona in Wiesbaden to get close to Elvis, beginning with the first visit to Gothenstrasse when Curry coached her on how to behave. Mike Edwards later described her as this little enigma who projected being demure, who wasn't demure, but she projected it. as a poser. Priscilla the Poser. Priscilla Poser. Maybe instead of Priscilla Bobblehead, she's going to become Priscilla Poseur. It's a good nickname. A lot of people hide who they are, and I think she created that aura when she first met him way back in Germany when she first went to his house. Now, in the process of pretending to be something she wasn't, the real Priscilla was disappearing. Yet she was driven still to achieve her ultimate goal, the one she had set for herself as a child, the life her parents had determined for her, to marry Elvis Presley. The deeper problem was Priscilla's ambivalence toward Elvis, and by sustaining this act, she only brought herself greater unhappiness. The Bobbleheads visited the Bel Air house during the filming of Girl Happy, Yes I Am. Priscilla was later to write, and they questioned Elvis about marriage while Priscilla pretended to occupy a separate bedroom for their benefit. The movie magazines had basically accepted her role as Elvis's hidden lover without creating a scandal. A sense of complacency had set in, leaving Priscilla and her parents increasingly edgy. Elvis, Priscilla admitted, balked at the subject of marriage, and she felt she had no choice but to continue her campaign in full force. That there is for all the for all the Priscilla fans that say, oh, he wanted to marry her. She herself said he balked at it. He had to be forced into marriage. That's the whole truth of the story, according to even Priscilla herself. That's not spread. That's not put out there. It's not there in her shows. She doesn't talk about how Elvis had to be forced to marry her, how unhappy she was. But that is the truth of the matter, according to Priscilla herself even. It doesn't sell tickets, though. What sells tickets is, oh, we were in love. We were going to reunite. We would have been together. He was my soulmate. I was his soulmate. There was no other woman but me. Linda Thompson didn't exist. Anne Margaret was nothing special. Ginger Alden, didn't exist. That's just... It's revisionist history, trying to rewrite it continually. This channel and you are here to stop that. On Facebook, just so you guys know, I just started my Facebook. Y'all know I get about 3.2 to 4 million impressions a month on YouTube. That means people see the videos, right? They see the titles. YouTube pushes it out. That's a lot. It's a lot of money. Just in the last week on Facebook, I've had close to 1 million views. One day I had, I think, either almost 400,000 or 500,000 views. So I'm doing what I can on my side to protect Elvis, to put your truth out there as the Elvis fan. So, like I said, continue supporting me as you can by watching the videos, watching them all over the end, sharing the videos. Like a lot of you do. I see Joanna Black shares a lot of videos all the time. And if you can, leave me a super thanks. That's a monetary donation, or stars if you're on Facebook, or become a member. Once again, I have to ask because a lot of y'all see it for the first time, and they say if you don't ask, if you don't talk about it, people are not even aware of it. But regardless, I appreciate and love every one of you, and I love the fact that you love Elvis. And that's what this channel is about, loving Elvis. And by extension, Lisa Marie, okay? And Lisa and Harper and Finley, okay? Those that Elvis would have doted on and did dote on, Lisa. All right, till next time, Ray Evers Photos, thanks so much for joining me.